Hi, Adaora.
Hi, Tolu.
I've read in your bio that you worked with some of the top shows in Nigeria, Nigerians Got Talent
Yeah,
and Nigeria's
I'd
Idol.
also.
I just want to ask, what was the toughest challenge you
Okay.
had
Yeah.
while you're working on the show?
While I was working on the show, oh wow. I'll definitely say the fact that, I had to deal with multiple stakeholders, right? So with a lot of the shows, these shows that we watch, there are many stakeholders. There is the sponsors who are stakeholders. There's the production team, right? So producer and the entire team that is actually producing the show. Then you have the format owner, right? So the original format owner, right? Who licenses the format out. And then you have the person who has purchased that format for the territory, right? So there are multiple people that you have to deal with per time. And then you also have like the TV stations where you're going to air it. So I think for me, it was just, being able to deal with these different people, different personalities, different wants, different needs, everybody having like their own KPIs that they needed to meet per time on the show, right? Because you have to have some level of emotional intelligence to be able to navigate that situation. And this kind of typically applies when you're working on any projects that have, so many different stakeholders, right? So you also had like sub stakeholders within those sponsorship teams. So you had like the finance guys whose focus was primarily the numbers. They didn't care about the creative, the aesthetics, none of that. You had the brand guys who just wanted to make sure that, they're consistently positioning their brand, right, throughout the show. You had like, the guys who were doing all the texting. So the VAS guys, right? That's what we call them, right? Value added services. And so they're just all these different, and the sponsorship managers. There's just so many people who have their own personal KPIs, and you must be mindful of that.
Wow, that's a very large team. So how
Yes,
were
a
you
lot.
able to navigate all this? So how did you handle it?
So I'm going to share like 3-4 things, right, that helped me to navigate that situation. One was to be very clear on the value proposition, right? So I made sure that, everything was documented as far as like what we were giving back in terms of value to each of these stakeholders, right? So this is what you get for what it is that you've put on the table. And so it needs to be very clear, right? And being able to call all the stakeholders into a space and have that conversation about this is what you are getting, this is what this person is getting, this is what that person is getting. And so that there are no fights, not too many fights to have to deal with, even though, right, on some of those shows, you still have, some challenges here and there where, people will show up and be upset about one sponsor getting more than the other and whatnot. And you can't really stop them, right, from feeling that way. I think that what you can do is to then navigate it such that you build relationships with these different people and you start to help them fulfill their individual KPIs, right? Which kind of, leads me into the second part of what I was able to do was to then say, okay, within your department, right? So say to the brand manager, within your department, what is it that you want to get out of this entire show, right? What is it that you want to make sure that you accomplish here? Speak to the finance guys, have the same conversation, speak to all the different departments that you're working with on the project and find out what their needs are for this entire show, because they all have their own, they don't care about the other department's KPIs, right? So if you're trying to just focus on the sponsorship team, you've missed it. So for me, I just delved in and just started, building relationships with these different people and understanding how I can help them to be able to fulfill what it was that they wanted to get out of the show. And so that helped a lot. And when I say what they wanted to get, it's mostly in the, they'll have like numbers, right, that they need to hit in terms of their targets, right? So I need to get X number of customers to see my product, to interact with my product. For some other people in a different department, it's just, I need to get as much top of mind awareness as possible, right? So I just need to make sure that, we've got all this stuff in people's faces, right? For somebody else, it's just like, okay, I just want to make sure that we get premium slots in your advertising. So again, just knowing these things and helping them navigate that. I also had to learn to be flexible, right? Because yes, there are certain things that have been promised to a client or to a sponsor. Well, in this case, sponsor, but this applies to pretty much any client that you're dealing with, right? So there's certain things that you promise and say, this is what we're going to deliver. And I found that a lot of people can tend to be very rigid with the delivery of that promise. It's like, we only promise this, so therefore we'll only deliver that particular thing. And I think that, if we understand that this is about people to people relationships, like you're dealing with people, you're trying to build that relationship, that rapport that will just make your work, your project easier, then you have to be willing to, move around a bit. So decide, what your threshold is, decide how much you're willing to move up front so that you can start to, offer services and offer things that are maybe outside of the contract, but don't jeopardize the project. So I did that, with the shows, is just being able to say, you know what, I have this additional slot that I can give you, pretty much at no cost to you, at no additional cost to you, but it's there, and I think that definitely helped, get the sponsors happy and even make them want to commit for future projects as well. Right. The other thing, I would wrap this up, right, because this is getting long, but the other thing I would definitely say, helps is to communicate with your clients before they even ask, right? And this is something that has just helped me with all of my clients' work, period. Not even just the projects I worked on, but just like with clients, is sometimes not waiting for them to be the ones to ask. Because there's nothing worse than, a client feeling like something is going wrong and like they have to start, trying to find out what is going wrong, or feeling like they had made a request and they haven't got a response to it and all of that. So what I will do a lot of times is when there's fire on the mountain, I will just mitigate that fire or the reaction to that fire by basically being the first person to reach out to client, not waiting for client to ask me on Sunday, why didn't my ad show, or why didn't this? If I figured out there was an issue that we had internally, then I would communicate it to the client so that I can manage the expectations and so they don't get caught off guard. Because remember, when I'm saying clients, remember what I said about their sub-stakeholders, right? So when I even say, the client didn't see their ad, it's not really just the organization. It also means that one person within that organization is going to have to take responsibility for that. That person doesn't want to be caught off guard. But if that person knows in advance, then they can quickly figure out how they're going to handle it with their boss. Right? And so everybody's happy on that Monday morning meeting. So always find ways to communicate. So I'm going to run through that real quick just so you remember the summary. Okay, so be flexible for sure. Make sure that you're very clear on what the value proposition is, document it. Make sure that you build relationships with the stakeholders and the sub-stakeholders within whatever organization you're working. And also make sure that you always communicate before the client asks.